Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for South and Southeast Asia. And so we're going to get to it and talk a little bit about Hinduism, which is a major religion. If you take a look at the map here, the area that's in the pink, that is the region that is probably better defined as India. But you might notice that there is a huge majority of people that live there that are practicers of Hinduism. So, Hinduism, as far as some quick facts, you have the Varnas, which is basically the social structure of life in India. You have the Brahmins, who are the highest of the Varnas, the highest class or caste. You have the Kshitras, who are the warriors and the rulers. You have the Vaishyas, who are basically the traders, the farmers, the herders, kind of the workers. And you have the Sudras, who are the servants. And there's even a class below this that is sometimes called the underclass. So we'll get going here. Some of the basic teachings of Hinduism is that Brahma is the internal spirit, and devas are aspects of Brahman that are active in our world. Reincarnation, which is this whole idea of like when a person dies or reborn, is based on a person's karma, which is basically how good or how bad they are. And if they're really bad, then when they're reincarnated, they'll come back as kind of a lesser form. And if they've been really good, then they will be reincarnated into something better. And it all depends on where you're at. The highest aspect of being reincarnated in kind of the Hindu belief is to be reincarnated as a cow. Okay, which seems kind of odd, but for them that is very sacred. Okay, the goal of life is to fulfill one's dharma. Okay, and to be reunited with Brahman, thus, being reincarnated into a cow, and thus you have fulfilled the most ultimate of all experiences. In number two, Hindus, their beliefs vary widely due to the influence of many different cultures. Hinduism, if you look at the map, India is kind of like the dominant region, but there are certain areas in South America where you see Hinduism. You might also see it in parts of Southeast Asia as well. Hindus believe that Brahman created and preserves the world. Everything in the world is an aspect of Brahman. Hindus also have beliefs that have affected the way that an individual lives. So a person would want to behave in a well manner to improve their karma, which is kind of their chances or their luck. If a person has improved their karma, their chances of being reincarnated to a better life would improve. And you might notice in the picture, you have a cow, a Brahma bull. So, the sacred text of Hinduism are the Vedas. Hindu religious practices are things like prayer, meditation, yoga, which is, today we kind of see that as kind of like a stretching exercise. But when Hindus actually do this, they actually are kind of saying certain prayers, and thus it is kind of a Hindu religious experience. Pilgrimages, going to certain places and where Hinduism was kind of noted, and a lot of those today are like in present day India. And there are offerings that they would bring to temple, or when they would bring to a pilgrimage and whatnot. Those are all very important. Hindus, for the most part, they believe that the Vedas are a collection of knowledge. They're not written by humans, but revealed to them by Brahman. Epics, which are, if you define it maybe as a form of literature, it's kind of like a long, heroic type of poem. But Epics are different from sacred Hindu texts because they are believed to be written by people to tell a story and not necessarily something that was revealed by one of the Hindu gods. Hindus worship in ways that can take place in places like temples, shrines, homes. Nevertheless, it is kind of unique to their culture. You might note that the people that are standing in the river or that body of water, the Ganges, which is a kind of an important river that kind of cuts through parts of India, it is a site of pilgrimage for many Hindus. And a lot of times what they will do is they will bring basically the cremated remains of one of their loved ones, and they will dump them into the river and then kind of like splash around in that. And many, many Hindus have done this for many generations. It seems kind of a strange way to interact with your loved one who has died, but that is kind of part of the Hindu tradition. The ultimate purpose of yoga is to teach people how to focus their bodies and minds to help them obtain moksha, okay, which is basically not quite like a spiritual revelation, but it is this idea of being kind of focused, body and mind on their faith. Hindus make pilgrimages to the Ganges. This is a river because they believe that the river will purify them and remove any bad karma. And again, you can see that they're bringing offerings to the river, splashing in the river and whatnot. Followers of Jainism, which is kind of like Hinduism, it's kind of a little more extreme, slightly different than Hinduism, but it has a lot of similarities. They have to adhere to some very strict practices. So the first one is this practice of ahimsa, which is this idea of nonviolence to any living creature. So if a Jainist would happen to see like a bug walking on the ground in front of them, they are not allowed to step on it. They can't show any harm to insects, can't swat a mosquito. They have to be tolerant of that, okay? They cannot tell, or they have to tell the truth at all times. And if they can't tell the truth, then they're probably to keep their mouth shut. They do not steal. Okay, so a lot of Jainists are very, very poor, but that's part of their belief system. And they try to eliminate greed, anger, prejudice, and this idea of gossip. It's a very strict discipline. So Jain monks and nuns, they must give up all their possessions. They have to live outdoors. They have to cover their mouths. They have to sweep the ground in front of them to avoid killing any insects. It's a little extreme. Okay, and if you take a look at the map, you can see some areas there where Jainism is kind of prevalent. It's kind of in the northeastern part of the country of India, kind of centered more northeast and the west. So when we talk about Indian society, we were kind of talking about the Varnas a little bit ago, and it's kind of the caste system. It's kind of their levels of class based on a certain social structure, and I kind of want to go through these. Again, the Brahmin, they're at the top of society. They are religious leaders. The Kshitra, they are the warriors and the rulers. The Vaishyas, they are the merchants, the artisans, the farmers. The Sudras, they are the workers and the servants. And if you look at the structure there's kind of this area called the untouchables. Sometimes they're known as pariahs or the Dalits. They are kind of like the slaves to society. Each one of these layers or strata has certain rules that they have to abide by. But once you are born into one of these classes or caste, you can never leave. So Brahmin have to marry Brahmin, Kshitras have to marry Kshitras, Vaishyas have to marry Vaishyas, Sudras have to marry Sudras, and Pariahs have to marry Pariahs. Okay, there's no moving up or down. You're kind of like born into it, and you can never leave. And the complication is this. When it comes time to marriage, a lot of times families will do like a pre-arrangement. So, like, if you have a couple little kids, you have a boy and a girl, and the parents probably realize at some point in time these two kids who are from the same class or caste might make good, prospective spouses in the future. What they might do is to kind of offer up a marriage even when these kids are toddlers. Okay, so sometimes the couple will not see each other until the wedding day. So it's kind of like marrying a stranger, and this was a very popular tradition for centuries in parts of India, and there are still families that practice this. It's a little extreme, but it's part of that. So, thank you very much.